Hey there, Workforce. Chris here with Work to Game, and it is time for another WoW versus Final Fantasy Versus. And this one is not going to be quite as clear as the other ones because today I'm just asking the question, what is the conversion from WoW Gold to Final Fantasy Gil? A lot of times we see in different things where people are talking about how much they can make per hour or how much maybe the different leveling potions come with, and there's really no way to gauge exactly what the wealth is just by looking at how much money people have in games because you earn them differently, you can buy them with different amounts of real life money, and they're used for different things. So let's go ahead and dive in and see if we can try to come up with a rough conversion. Now currently it's against the terms of service to buy Final Fantasy Gil with real life money. This is referred to as RMT in game, and this is absolutely something that you can get banned for. But since WoW does offer a way to purchase it with real life money, there is a very easy conversion here. And when you go out and you try to find guides on how much you can make per hour, there's so much exaggeration, there's so much poor objectivity and documentation on what like a literal effort hour would be worth across a consistent player base, across a wide number of skills or very comparable skills, that this in my opinion is the easiest way to gauge what the value of this is, the inherent value. So I have a couple of websites pulled up here. The first one says that it looks like 1,000,000 Gil is right around $8.29. The next website puts it down around about half of that, maybe closer to $5, but the last one puts it right back up at that about $8. So let's say that $8 is 1,000,000 Gil, and it actually looks like it's a hair over, so I'm going to use this first website's $8.29 as our placeholder. Now we need something to compare it to, so the next thing is we're here in World of Warcraft, and I'm here at the auction house, and we can go ahead and say that we know that a WoW token right here is $15 to your Blizzard account, very literally. And it is currently worth 190,000 gold. Now this is actually on the higher end of what I've seen as I've been watching it for the last week. So for the benefit of WoW, let's go ahead and count it where it shows right now. So 190,000 gold is $15. Now if we go ahead and quick math, go ahead and pull up a calculator here and say, well, what is 1,000,000 gold divided by 190,000? It's just over 5, that makes sense. And if we go ahead and multiply that by $15, that means 1,000,000 WoW gold is $79. So there is a substantial price difference in the value of gold versus Gil. That's not a big shocker, but let's go ahead and store those values. $8.29 versus $78.95. Now the question is, what can you use it on? Now in Final Fantasy, the big gold sink is obviously houses, but they're not available for everybody because they do run out. And in WoW, they have big gold sinks like new mounts with each expansion, where there's these ridiculous bags you can buy, but those are for the super rich as just a way to remove something from the economy. The question is, what is the everyday person's expenses? What does 1,000,000 gold, 1,000,000 Gil, what does this get you just as an average everyday player? And so I picked a couple of key items that I think there's overlap that both games demand, so we can look up the prices. And the first one here is that we are in World of Warcraft, and you'll notice that I have gems pulled up in the auction house. It looks like 20,000 is a pretty typical price for kind of your high-end level 110 gems, and that is the current content. So we need to compare that to Final Fantasy. Now currently in the game, materia rank 6 is kind of the highest, and I see 10,000, and if we jump down to vitality, we've got 10,000-ish, 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 none currently available. So it looks like it's going to be a hair over 10,000 just as an average everyday price here, and then we get down into the big ones. So these are the ones that everybody really pays for. So I see 80,000, 70,000, 50,000, and then we're going to ignore gatherers and crafters because that's not exactly fair in that they don't have quite the same, I guess, ability to filter over the entire population. So if we take these nice big expensive ones and compare those, it looks like 80,000 is the high end. So let's go ahead and write that down. And now to go back the other way, another common consumable is the food, and that's the food that's going to give you buffs. And so we're going to start with Final Fantasy this time and go back the other way, and we're just going to look at these first 5 most popular eye level 340 foods. And we're going to look for the most expensive. So 7,000, 15,000. We're going to ignore high quality because it's honestly, that's not quite a fair comparison because you don't have to have that. 6,000. 8,000. So 16,000 is your most expensive food, and just for those of you to notice, that's your crit vitality determination. So let's go ahead and write down 16,000. Now, one of the more common things to do when you're raiding in WoW is to put down a feast, because the feast offers a benefit that says up to 35 people in your raid party. Let's just assume a 10-man because that's pretty typical kind of size on the number of people that are going to eat off a feast, and this is going to give you kind of that well-fed 8 in a stat for 1 hour across a group of people. And so 10-man seems like the closest I can compare. These games are very different in how they handle gold and how they handle gil, and so I'm trying to do my best in making a correlation, but this is kind of showing just the number of things that these games do just a little bit different than each other. And so a hearty feast divided by 10, let's call that 58 gold per person per time you put it down. Now, one of the bigger things that you can do is you can actually go ahead and buy gear, so you can buy your way up to a nice high eye level when you first cap a character. Now, this isn't always going to be better. It's often not going to be better than what you can find if you go do content, but this is a very fast way of catching up those slots where you're missing something, and it can be a huge money sink on the few occasions that you get a class and you have a chance to do it. You can end up buying several pieces for a brand new job that just capped, and you can end up spending tons of money all at once that it's taking you months to just kind of build up as you didn't have a use for it. And now as we pull up these prices, one of the problems is that when you get to this really high level like this, finding a bind on equip, something that doesn't immediately bind to the character that picked it up, is hard. So I'm going to base this on what the highest level that you can find it. Right now that's a 985 in Legion, and so if we kind of scroll down here a bit, you'll see that it already drops off. And so the lowest level, when I just scrolled through a second ago, that I could find, the lowest priced was 950,000 gold. So it is a lot. And so let's go ahead and put that down for World of Warcraft. Now, unlike consumables, high quality is something that somebody incredibly wealthy might splurge for here. Consumables, I know there's people who buy high quality. I know it can make a slight difference, but the moment that wears off, it's gone. So with armor, I'm gonna go ahead and give it here because it does push up that stat line just a little bit, and that's incredibly important in gear. And so when you have a level 350 here, 849,000, this is the most expensive item on my server currently available right now. So it's actually a little cheaper than World of Warcraft, which seems odd, but that's just a tribute to just how much the crafting is available over here. The crafting, when you get into that high quality, can be very comparable, and that's a very nice high eye level to jump into current content. And the last thing that's easy to compare is minions, pets, right? And so starting over here on Final Fantasy, I just made a run through all of what mine are trading at right now, and it looks like the most expensive is the dwarf rabbit here at 4 million gil. So there is a ton of pets in both these games. There's a ton of minions in these games. I'll be really honest, I don't have the time to sit down and view every single listing of every single thing on both markets, but I will check the top most expensive just to see what they're trading at right now. Now, World of Warcraft, the auction house, is a little harder to make sense of on its own in that it doesn't necessarily naturally give you that history, but you can make up for that with an add-on. And so I've downloaded an add-on here that helps me track kind of all servers and things like that. So when I mouse over this, it'll tell me if this price is fair, and it is. 3 million is a fair price for the Nightshades, the Nightshade Sproutling. So we're going to go ahead and count that as our most expensive pet on WoW, and it is time to compare this stuff. Alright, and the numbers are in. Final Fantasy XIV, $8.29 for a million gil. If we move over to WoW and we scale it up to a million gold, that way they're comparable, it would actually be $78.95. So it is almost 10 times as expensive. So think of 10 gil as 1 gold from here on out. Now, what does that buy you? What is the cost of living inside these two universes? So if we talk about the first thing is going to be gems, kind of gemming your gear, right? You're going to have to put that materia in the slots. You're going to have to put the gems in the slots. It is going to cost you about 66 cents on a US dollar to get you your gem in Final Fantasy XIV, which is nothing compared to the full $1.58 in WoW. And so I would say, you know, given that conversion, then that point goes to Final Fantasy. Now, when it comes to consumables, WoW has just a better system, and so that's going to save you money in your cost of living in this game. From the standpoint of cost, I don't really want to dive into who has the better consumable ideas. That could be another Versus video. But the food you eat in Final Fantasy XIV, if everybody in the party is buffing up for the raid, it's going to cost them 13 cents each on that US dollar, as opposed to when we move over to WoW, where if one person's putting it down for every 10, it's actually half a penny. So just not even close. And it rounds up to half a penny. So let's go ahead and toss that one in WoW's favor. Now, when it comes to buying armor, buying that missing slot, or quickly gearing up that extra class, if you've built up a substantial amount of US dollars worth of currency in your given game, it's only going to cost you $7 a slot to buy each piece of gear in Final Fantasy. So, I mean, about a half a month subscription. It's kind of a bummer, but when you start to talk about buying that same, like, jumping straight into top level content gear for WoW, it could cost you as much as $75. Now keep in mind, in both of these games, the moment you give up a little bit on that eye level, it's going to come down substantially. But I was just trying to compare that absolute top end gear to top end gear, and there's a huge difference because of just the difference in the way that crafting systems support in-game in these two games. Now the last up is the best way I could think of to sum up kind of the glamour part of the game, the transmog, the just totally cosmetics. You know, things like mounts, things like glamour gear and transmog, those are really hard to kind of compare directly when it comes to cost, but minions and pets are almost identical and actually command almost an identical amount of gold and gil. Unfortunately, there's a conversion rate between those. So that does mean that Final Fantasy is costing you $33.16 to buy one of the most rare pets in the game right now, and WoW is costing you $236 for that same pet, which makes me actually kind of want to sell it on the auction house if I ever find it, because while I do want it, that pays a huge number of months in subscription. Now, this is all fantastically interesting. So if we compare this, that the armor is actually going to go substantially in Final Fantasy's favor, and the pet is going to go substantially in Final Fantasy's favor, which means that the amount of money that you can make in this game is going to go in Final Fantasy's favor. It buys you a lot more, and that's only interesting because I think WoW has the more active economy when it comes to feeling the way the auction house turns things over, but the crafting is so different in these games that I would have to assume that that's what's ultimately driving people's ability to, when they want it, go out and gather that wealth, which is kind of affecting that supply demand. So I actually am surprised that this is going in Final Fantasy's favor. Now, the last thing that I want to point out is that the whole reason I started working on this post was I was curious after the level boost, level jump video, and I really still don't know how to compare that to this, because if I were to pick WoW and say, okay, well, what does $60, right? How do I get that kind of 800,000 gold to pay for a class? Well, there's obviously a real conversion there, except that when I go pick that class, I could be, I mean, if I'm a paladin, that's a tank, a melee DPS, and a healer. If that's a druid, I'm actually also getting a range DPS in there for 4. There are some classes that are just DPS, but they have multiple specs. So you're getting a lot of bang for your buck. You're getting a lot of types of play out of that one character. Not to mention that order halls and stuff per character can generate a huge amount of money just from keeping those characters idle, and you can maintain those from the app. So there's a real investment in, if you have an extra, you know, 700,000 or 800,000 gold laying around, in buying that level boost potion. Now, on the other side of that, if you take the Final Fantasy Gil and you were to turn that into money, even though there's not really a system to do that, if you were to turn that into money and level boost, you can actually use a jump potion in Final Fantasy XIV to push a single job up to cap, but that doesn't increase that job's earning potential because they don't have access to a separate set of squadrons or retainers or anything like that. That would have to be a separate character, and since most people play on one character, that doesn't really help you there, and you're only getting that one job. So if you wanted to add a tank, a healer, and a DPS, you'd have to buy 3 of them. And so I really didn't know how to say, okay, is that $75 or is it really just $25? Because over here most people only play one spec. I don't know exactly how to compare that, and I'd love to know what you guys think, but this is roughly kind of the comparison that I see these games having. This week happens to go in Final Fantasy's favor, maybe next week it'll go the other way. You guys will just have to tune in to find out, and let me know kind of what topics you guys want me to kind of compare and dive into. This one was really interesting, and honestly it's really hard to get a pinpoint on it because you're trying to sum up both economies in an objective way. And so I would love to know if you can think of any other ways I could have compared this or any other data that you would use to kind of draw parallels between these games for players that may not play the other game. So thank you guys so much for watching. This has been Chris with Work to Game, and I will see you guys next time.
Thanks so much for watching this video. If you want to check out any other videos, you should click over here. And then we've got like some kind of vlog thing down here in the corner. And then we've got like subscribe. Have you yeah, like that's really, you should totally do it. This was a complete disaster.